Gravity Falls is one of the most popular animated shows of the past decade, delivering spine-tingling mysteries that keep us entertained. Because of this, there's a strong chance that Disney will soon release a third season of the show. What? But did you know that the pilot episode of this amazing series would have been completely different from the original story?
And there's a goat on my bed.
The first thing you'll notice is that the characters' appearances are somewhat different, yet they are still very recognizable. This clearly shows that the creators already had a strong vision of what they wanted even before getting the series approved. Take Dipper for example. He didn't have the vest, but he already sported the white and blue cap. His face had rosy cheeks, and he looked a bit skinnier, but it's definitely still Dipper. Another character that changed a lot is Wendy. If you look at this image, you'll see that she wasn't a redhead before, and her hat has changed quite a bit. She got freckles, and her outfit is also really different. But we'll talk more about Wendy in this video, so stay tuned! Both Mabel and Stan are also easy to recognize. Mabel looks taller and has a smaller head, while Stan is more square-shaped and appears more disheveled than the original version. Still, we can recognize all of them, can't we? It's amazing how the animation was already well developed before the original production, even with the differences, and we'll talk about those shortly. You know what to do. Grab your popcorn, watch out for the Bigfoot, and join me as we analyze 21 differences in the Gravity Falls pilot. Another episode of Cinewave is about to begin. As we mentioned, the story is basically the same, but there are some differences between them. To start, the pilot video is only 12 minutes long, while the original episode is longer, clocking in at a full 22 minutes. Right at the beginning, you see Dipper doing a narration, which is the same in both videos. Shortly after, he and Mabel drive through a billboard in a golf cart and are chased by a monster. In the original, it's a giant gnome, while in the pilot, they face evil shadows. Another difference we notice between the Gravity Falls pilot and the original is that Mabel's cat is dark, but in the first version, you can see that it's blue. This is a small change, but it's very easy to spot. Another change is that in the pilot, the two siblings are already settled in their room. Mabel is reading a magazine about boys, and Dipper is looking at a report about strange things, clearly indicating the topics they are interested in. Meanwhile, in the episode that we all watched on Disney, they are both making their beds and getting to know the environment. There's even a goat in the room. Dipper introduces his sister to the audience, and we see a scene where she tries to impress a boy. In the pilot, Stan doesn't know his grandchildren's names and calls Mabel Rowena and Dipper Dylan. However, in the series, this was not approved and the character does not confuse their names. Speaking of Stan's antics, when he presents the shop in the pilot, he does this for Dipper and his sister, but in the original, there are tourists visiting the store, and in this scene, we get to know the Mystery Shack. Would you like to visit a supernatural cabin in the middle of the forest with your family? Then comment #mystery so we can get to know ya! A very important scene occurs in the pilot that does not exist in the original for a reason I'll explain later. Basically, Dipper, Mabel, and Stan are trying ice creams, and on one of the popsicle sticks, there's the following question. What is a ghost's favorite ice cream flavor? Mabel answers blueberry. None of this exists in the original, and you'll find out the reason later. Now, a scene that doesn't exist in the pilot takes place in the original, where Stan tells Dipper to go to the forest and put up signs to promote the Mystery Shack, and there the boy finds journal number 3. The reason for this scene is that in the pilot, the book is under Stan's bed, and he already knows it's there. But in the original, the production wanted the book to be found in a much more sinister place. Another difference is that in the original, the book is called Lost Journal number 3, while in the pilot, it's named The Cursed Journal of Dr. Crackpot. In both episodes, Mabel introduces her new boyfriend, Norman, and Dipper thinks he's a zombie, but the order of events changes. In the pilot, the boy meets his sister's boyfriend and then looks at the book, but in the original, he discovers the book first and then meets Norman. Even with the order changing, Dipper decides to secretly film Norman in both episodes. When Dipper confronts his sister in both productions, Mabel wishes that Norman is actually a vampire, and in the reveal scene, there's a reference to the movie Twilight when Bella discovers who Edward Cullen is. But when Norman opens his jacket, instead of sparkling like a vampire, we find out that he's actually a pile of gnomes stacked on top of each other. Mabel rejects him, but in both episodes, the little creatures kidnap her. During the chase where the gnomes try to grab the golf cart that Dipper uses to rescue Mabel in the pilot, the kidnappers run separately, but in the original, they form a giant gnome, which is the first monster that appears at the beginning of the episode. The solution to the gnome problem is different in both versions. In the original, Mabel gets rid of them by using a leaf blower, causing them all to fly away, but in the pilot, the story is much more complex. Remember when I mentioned the question about a ghost's favorite ice cream flavor? In the pilot, Mabel is delivered to the Gnome King, and Dipper challenges him to a duel with the winner getting the girl, but the leader says the fight will be the answer to a riddle. "What is a ghost's favorite ice cream flavor?" the king asks, and with Mabel's help, Dipper answers blueberry. Magically, the girl is right, and the gnomes lose the challenge, turning to stone, unlike in the show, where they simply leave and appear in several other episodes later. And so you don't turn to stone, I challenge you to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to receive notifications. Speaking of His Majesty, the Gnome King doesn't exist in the original episode. He is only introduced in the pilot, which is a shame because he's a pretty funny and interesting character, but creator Alex Hirsch removed this idea from the final production. Since the pilot, produced in 2010, is only 12 minutes long, it focuses on the supernatural to convince Disney to make the show and go straight to the point in the story. However, in the original, the relationship between the characters is more developed. For example, Dipper and Mabel already know about the strange things that happen in Gravity Falls, while in the original, they discover them when they arrive there. Remember when I mentioned Wendy? Well, she doesn't actually appear in the pilot episode, and the reason is production costs. Not all characters need to be fully developed in the pilot. The Wendy design we saw at the beginning of the video appears in behind-the-scenes art and in the pilot's opening, which is why we find out she would be quite different. As for the character Sus Ramirez, he isn't even mentioned and was created solely for the original series. In the pilot, the Mystery Shack's merchandise and statues are made in 3D art, and this animation style is very reminiscent of the amazing world of Gumball, which blends the two styles very well. However, in the original, everything was modified to 2D. There is also an opening in both episodes, but they are different. In the pilot, there's a song being sung, and we see another Wendy. Basically, these are scenes from what would be the first episode. In contrast, the original has no song, and the opening is composed of various cuts of strange and mysterious scenes, creating an air of suspense. Another difference is that in the initial opening scene of the pilot, there's a reference to the movie The Shining, where two twin sisters in blue dresses appear. Now for a fun fact, Gravity Falls really exists, but it's called Vortex, Oregon, located in the United States. This place is known for having very strange occurrences, such as animals refusing to enter, and there's even a cabin full of mysteries along the road. The creator of the series used to travel there with his sister, who is the original inspiration for Mabel, and the location Vortex, Oregon is clearly the place he based Gravity Falls on. Let's say you're someone who wants to create an animated series like Gravity Falls. You might be a very creative writer eager to produce the kind of show you love to watch. In this context, you need to pitch your ideas to a production company that might be interested in producing your cartoon. This was the case for creator and writer Alex Hirsch. He rushed to produce a test episode that he and his team would use to convince Disney in a quick pitch presentation. In the world of television and film, we call this pitching. This style of conversation is meant to sell a story. The video he managed to produce is called The Pilot, and in the case of Gravity Falls, it is a 12-minute sequence introducing Dipper and Mabel. Impressive, don't you think? It's really cool to see how long before the animation was produced by Disney, the characters and the story were almost fully developed. I hope Gravity Falls has more episodes someday, but until then, I know our channel will continue bringing you a lot of content. We've prepared 2 more videos for you to watch, and we'll see you next time. Bye!